Ready for a deep dive into a life totally transformed? We're going to hear about Isaias Martinez and, wow, his story. It'll stay with you.
Yeah, what gets me about Isaias is how it's like not just him, It shows how strong faith can be, especially in a close group like the Light of the World Church.
Right, and we're going deep into this interview he did. It's called The Footsteps of My Life, I think. Anyway, he holds nothing back, childhood, gangs, all of it. But it starts with him being born into this church, Light of the World. You'd think, easy peasy, faith-wise, right?
Not always, huh? Sometimes when you grow up surrounded by certain beliefs, you end up questioning them more.
For sure. And Isaias, he talks about feeling almost disconnected. Like as a kid, the church stuff, it didn't grab him. He was more curious about the stuff he wasn't supposed to do,
Totally. It's like that pull towards the unknown, super common growing up. They're just trying to figure themselves out.
And Isaias, he definitely wanted to figure things out his way. He even mentions dodging baptism at 14, which is when you can choose to commit in the light of the world.
He just wasn't ready for that yet. He wanted to see life on his own terms first.
And that search for belonging, for somewhere to fit in, it took him down a rough path. By 12, he'd left the church, gotten involved with gangs, then came the drugs, the addiction.
It's a reminder that looking for belonging in the wrong places, it can have consequences. He talks about this time with a lot of regret, seeing violence, crime, even friends dying.
Heavy stuff. But even in all that darkness, there's this story that stuck with me. It's Isaias and his dad, who's super devout, right? They're talking about tattoos. Shows how parents, they can have this quiet influence. Ever had a talk like that just stayed with you?
Oh, tons. And sometimes you only realize it years later.
Exactly. So picture this Isaias' dad explaining why tattoos go against their beliefs. Seems small, but it was huge for him. He never got any, which now he sees as a blessing because tattoos were everywhere in that gang life.
Like a seed his dad planted, reminding him where he came from, even when he was so far from it. Those small moments, they can mean everything.
For real. And get this, at 18, after all that time in gangs, something changes.
That longing for something more, maybe? He called it a void, like nothing in the world could fill it.
And that's when he goes back to the Light of the World Church.
That's sick, right? That yearning for something bigger than yourself, that return to faith.
And at first it was great. He's thriving, reconnecting with his spirituality, but, and this is where it gets really interesting, he backslides again.
Not because he's rebelling this time. This time, it's something we all deal with, getting caught up in success, in material stuff.
He's got this good job, making money, and slowly, the church, the prayer, it all gets pushed aside. The bigger the paychecks got, the more all-consuming it became.
Makes you think, right? Yeah. Even good things, your career, it can take over if you're not careful.
He learned the hard way. Stopped going to those daily prayers, which are huge in the light of the world. It's like he stopped feeding his soul,
Neglecting that part of himself, that connection to something bigger. No wonder he struggled.
He was really open about how that lack of spiritual grounding, it led to old habit stealing, going against what the church taught.
It's easy to judge, but who hasn't been there? Yeah. You get on track, then boom, something happens. We lose sight of what matters. But the great thing is, Isaias' story doesn't end there.
It's a story of coming back stronger each time. And that's what we'll get to as we dig deeper into his journey and the incredible message he has to share.
Second chances. Yeah, that's a big part of why Isaias' story hits so hard. He owns his mistakes, doesn't try to hide them.
And that's got to be why people connect with him, especially those who've drifted from the light of the world. He calls them brothers and sisters, talks directly to them.
No judgment, just pure empathy. He's been there. Felt that same hopelessness, like, man, have I screwed up too bad for a do-over?
Right. It's that feeling of, I get it, I went down that road too, but you can come back.
And he uses this powerful analogy straight from the Light of the World's teachings, the prodigal son. That story about forgiveness no matter what.
Oh man, the prodigal son, every time. But imagine it from the son's side, that shame, the fear of being rejected. Isaias really taps into that, especially after everything he'd done.
And then he kind of flips it. He says, remember, the father in that story, he doesn't even hesitate. Arms wide open, welcomes his son back, throws a party. God's love is always there no matter how far you wander.
Love that. So hopeful. But he's honest about the tough parts of coming back to faith too. He talks about how the world tries to pull you away from the church.
Those little pressures, right? The judging whispers, the looks. He's saying, don't listen to that. Real acceptance comes from God, not people.
Good reminder that even in a church, people mess up. We're all human.
And that's fine. It's that desire to come back, to ask for forgiveness and reconnect with that. Strength, that guidance that matters.
And then he gets really real, talking about his own kids. They're grown now, serving in the church. You can hear it in his voice when he talks about not always being the best example for them.
So vulnerable. He owns his past, how easily his choices could have led his kids down the same path.
But by changing his life, he found peace. And he made a better life for his children.
Proof that when you grow, it affects everyone around you. His story, it's like a shield, protecting his kids from the pain he felt.
That relief in his voice is so clear, grateful they didn't have to see that gang violence, the addiction.
He's humble about it too. Not saying he has it all figured out, just sharing what he's learned. Still faces struggles, but now he has his faith, the light of the world church, to help him through.
He even says walking with God is like having a compass and a guide in a world that can be so confusing.
Beautiful, right? Not about avoiding the hard stuff, it's about having the faith to handle it.
Which builds to his final message. Man, it's powerful, talking directly to those who've distanced themselves from the church.
No preaching, no judgment. Just reminding them, you're not forgotten. Your place is still there.
There's this one part he compares the church to a big hug, just pure love and acceptance.
And he means it. He even gives out his contact info. Anyone who needs to talk, they can reach out. That's real compassion right there.
Really makes you think, what can we all learn from Isaias? What sticks with us from his experiences?
Big question, right? What sticks with you after a story like that? For me, it's a few things.
Hit me with it.
Belonging. That's huge. Isaiah's found it in the church, but we all need it. That feeling of being connected, accepted, part of something. It doesn't have to be religion, it could be family, friends, whatever.
People, right? The ones who get you, even the messy bits.
Exactly. And that kind of leads to the next thing being real, even when it's tough. Isaiah's talking about his struggles, messing up, even within his faith. Makes him human, you know.
And makes that hope he's found even more powerful, because if he can come back after all that, maybe we all can.
That's the core of it, right? Hope, redemption. No matter how far off track we get, there's a way back.
Sometimes, like with Isaias, it means coming full circle, but you understand yourself, your faith, way better.
He said those daily prayers, they're like food for the soul. Reminds me, gotta nurture that connection to something bigger.
And hey, bigger doesn't have to mean God, right? Could be nature, art, whatever gives you peace, purpose.
For sure. Finding what feeds your soul. But what got me was Isaias inviting people in, not just talking about his church, but saying, come see.
Come to a service, feel it, talk to people, so open.
Shows he means it.
Yeah.
He believes in it so strongly, wants to share that, even with people who might doubt it.
Sometimes the best way to get something is to just experience it. Be there, listen with an open mind.
And remember, everyone's path is different. Isaiah's found his way back to faith, took some detours to get there. Others, it'll be different. Point is, keep searching, keep that conversation going.
Stay curious about the world, about yourself. Never know, one story, it might change how you see things, open you up in ways you didn't expect, might even push you to start your own change.
Well said. And those big journeys, they often start small. A leap of faith, that willingness to say, okay, let's see what's possible.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Isaiah's incredible story, here's something to think on. What's your next step gonna be? What will you discover?
This has been an AI-generated episode review of the Light from the Inside podcast. God pay you for your support of this testimonial project.